little girl cried, begging not to have her hair cut. But the millionaire's shout changed everything. The quiet evening wrapped itself around the peaceful suburb. Houses glowed with soft golden lights, trees whispered gently in the wind, and the entire neighborhood seemed to have drifted into sleep. But in the large house at the end of the street, that silence was suddenly shattered. The sharp crash of breaking glass rang out, followed by the muffled sobs of a child. Inside the disordered living room stood Emily Carter, a 6-year-old girl, her face pale, her tiny fingers trembling as if the entire world had turned against her. In front of her stood Vanessa, the stepmother, her hair styled neatly, lips painted a striking red, and eyes as cold as stone. Without a trace of mercy, she gripped Emily's arm tightly and dragged her out to the porch. The street light cast a pale glow over the cold stone steps. In Vanessa's hand, a pair of scissors gleamed under the light, and locks of Emily's golden hair began to fall to the ground. Each harsh snip echoed like a blade, carving into the little girl's heart. Tears streamed down her thin cheeks as Emily's voice trembled. "Mom, please don't do this!" But the desperate plea of a child did nothing to stop Vanessa. Instead, she squeezed Emily's wrist so tightly that the little girl let out a cry of pain. More strands of hair fell, mingling with her tears. The noise had drawn the neighbors. They gathered at the gate, whispering, muttering. Some turned their faces away, unwilling to witness, while others stared on with pity in their eyes. Emily saw them, and in her tear-filled gaze, a painful truth formed. No one will help me. On the steps, Vanessa yanked Emily's hair again, lifting the scissors high, ready to cut once more. Everything seemed frozen in that moment. Silence, helplessness, and a suffocating fear. And then, from the gate, came the heavy sound of a car door slamming shut. The noise sliced through the tense air like a blade. Vanessa froze for a moment. Emily's small heart stopped beating in fear. She lifted her swollen, tear-filled eyes wide open. At the gate stood the tall figure of Michael Carter, Emily's father, returning home after a long business trip. In one hand he held a brown leather briefcase, in the other a green stuffed dinosaur, a gift for his little girl. He hadn't yet stepped forward, but his piercing gaze had already locked onto the frozen scene on the stone steps. Michael Carter's eyes froze on the scene at the porch. Before him, his little daughter trembled, her hair unevenly chopped, golden strands scattered across the stone steps. Vanessa still gripped Emily's arm tightly, scissors glinting in her hand. For a moment, time seemed to stop. Even the neighborhood dogs went silent, as though everything waited for Michael's first reaction. He climbed the steps slowly, his shadow falling over the child, curled up in fear. His voice cut through the heavy air, deep and sharp. "Vanessa? What are you doing?" Vanessa flinched. Her face, moments ago twisted in rage, froze in place. The hand holding the scissors lowered slowly. Her voice trembled, laced with a false sweetness. "Michael, you misunderstood. I only wanted to teach Emily how to behave. She's clumsy, always dropping things, never listening. I never meant to hurt her." But Michael's eyes did not waver. Cold as steel, they pierced straight into her. In Vanessa's grip, Emily's tear-streaked face turned toward her father in desperate pleading. Each drop rolling down her cheek was a silent cry. Her small, trembling hand reached out as if begging, "Daddy, save me." Michael bent down, setting his leather briefcase aside. His arms opened wide, his voice firm. "Emily, come to me." But Vanessa tightened her grip, clinging to the last shred of power she thought she had. Emily whimpered in pain. Michael's stride lengthened, fury flashing in his eyes. He grabbed hold of his daughter, yanking her free from Vanessa's grasp. Emily collapsed into her father's arms, her whole body trembling violently. She buried her face against his shoulder, sobbing uncontrollably. Her breaths came short and ragged, but within her cries lay a faint relief. "Papa, I'm so scared," Emily whispered, her voice barely audible. The words cut deeper into Michael's heart than any blade could. He held her tightly, one hand shielding her disheveled hair, the other rubbing her back gently. His gaze never left Vanessa. "I've seen enough." The words rang heavy, cold as ice. Vanessa bit her lip, her eyes blinking rapidly as if tears might fall, but none came. She stepped back, muttering weakly, "Michael, you don't understand. I only wanted the best for her, to teach her discipline, order." He gave no reply. The strength of his embrace around Emily was the only answer. From this moment forward, he would never allow anyone to harm his daughter again. In her father's arms, Emily's sobs began to subside, though her small body still trembled. Tears clung to her lashes, but in the corner of her eyes glimmered a fragile spark of hope. The neighbor's eyes were still glued to the iron gate. Whispers drifted through the wind, stinging Michael's heart. He didn't want his daughter to become the subject of gossip for the entire street. Holding Emily tightly in his arms, he raised his head and fixed his gaze on Vanessa. His voice dropped, cold and sharp. "Enough. Let's go inside. Out here, the neighbors see everything. They'll laugh at us." Vanessa hesitated for a moment, then forced a stiff smile. She lowered the scissors and strode inside, as though she were the one insulted. Michael carried Emily close behind, slamming the door shut. The sound echoed through the house, shutting out all prying eyes. Inside, the air grew heavy. Michael sat Emily on the sofa, draping his coat over her small frame. She still hiccuped softly, clutching the green dinosaur. Michael's eyes locked onto Vanessa. "Explain, Vanessa, right now." Vanessa folded her arms, trying to appear calm, but her eyes flashed with defiance. "You come home unexpectedly, see one scene, and judge me?" "Michael, you have no idea what I endure. She's stubborn, insolent, never listens. I only wanted her to learn discipline." Michael's voice struck like a hammer. "Cutting her hair in front of the neighbors? Squeezing her wrist until she cries out? That's discipline?" Vanessa's face flushed red, fury rising as she stepped forward. "You always take her side. You've never trusted me. I'm your wife. I take care of her every day, while you come home with gifts and play the hero." Michael stood tall, shielding Emily behind him. "If this is your idea of care, then she's better off without you." The words hit like an invisible slap. Vanessa trembled with rage, then screamed, her voice cracking, "You don't trust me. You never have." The cry rang through the living room. Emily flinched, clutching her toy tighter. Michael said nothing, his eyes cold as stone. At last Vanessa spun around, her heels striking the tiles with sharp echoes. The door slammed shut behind her. Only Michael's heavy breathing and Emily's muffled sobs filled the room. Silence thickened, marking a deeper fracture in a marriage already crumbling. That night, the house sank into an uncanny silence. Emily had fallen asleep, still clutching the green-stuffed dinosaur her father had just given her. Every so often, her small body twitched, as if the shadow of fear still lingered. Michael sat alone in his study, his eyes staring blankly into the void. Images flooded his mind, Emily's weary eyes each time he returned from business trips, the small scratches on her arms that he had so easily accepted with Vanessa's excuse. She was just playing outside. The nights when Emily sat alone on the staircase, staring quietly into nothingness. He had seen it all, yet he had never truly seen. Guilt tightened around his chest like a vice. Michael clenched his fists, his nails digging deep into his palms. He, a skilled lawyer, a man who fought for justice in the outside world, had allowed his own daughter to suffer abuse within the walls of his home. He remembered Vanessa's words. You focus on work. I'll take care of her. He had trusted her, believing her strictness was discipline. But the truth laid bare before him. It wasn't discipline, it was cruelty. Michael rose and walked to the window. Outside, the streetlight cast its pale glow over the quiet street. His reflection stared back at him through the glass, eyes heavy with exhaustion and burning with anger at himself. In that moment, he vowed never to let this happen again. He returned to his desk, pulled open a drawer, and took out a blank sheet of paper. His hand trembled, but his resolve surged stronger. On the page, his pen carved out the first words, "Divorce petition." As the ink dried, his chest tightened, but within that weight came a clarity he had never known before. This was not only the end of a marriage, it was the beginning of a vow, to give Emily back her safety, her childhood, and her faith in family. This decision wasn't just to escape a hollow marriage, but to give Emily back her safety, her childhood, and her faith in the love of a family. The next morning, sunlight slipped through the curtains, but inside the Carter household, the heaviness of the previous night lingered. Emily sat quietly in the dining room, clutching her green dinosaur, dark circles still shadowing her eyes after a restless night. Michael placed a glass of milk before her, gently brushing her uneven hair. "Eat your breakfast, Emily. I'm here now." She nodded faintly, her eyes searching his face for assurance that everything would be all right. Just then, the click of heels echoed across the floor. Vanessa entered the room, looking immaculate, as if nothing had happened the night before. Dressed in an elegant outfit, her face carefully made up, her crimson lips curved in a feigned smile. "Good morning," she said softly. "It seems we have a fresh start." Michael met her gaze. From his briefcase, he pulled out a sheet of paper and placed it firmly on the table. The sound of paper against wood struck the air. "Sign it." Vanessa's smile froze. She picked up the document, her eyes falling on the first line. Divorce petition. Her face paled, her hands trembled, yet she tried to keep her pride intact. You really mean this, Michael? After everything I've done for you? For this family?" Michael replied, his tone calm but unyielding. "I mean to protect my daughter, and I won't compromise." Vanessa crumpled the paper in her fist, then threw it back onto the table. Her voice rose, shrill with fury. "You'll regret this. You think you can throw me away like some broken object? I have rights in this house, and I won't leave empty-handed." Emily flinched, clutching her dinosaur tighter, retreating behind her father. Michael immediately stepped in front of her, his eyes blazing. "If you ever dare lay a hand on Emily again, I will not forgive you." The air thickened with tension. Vanessa bit her lip, hatred flashing in her eyes. She knew this time Michael had truly taken his stand against her. Every word from him was a hammer blow to the authority she once wielded. At last she spun on her heels, the sharp strikes of her stilettos ringing like a challenge. The door slammed shut behind her, leaving the room suffocating in silence. Michael bent down, resting a hand on his daughter's shoulder. Emily trembled, but her tears had stopped. She looked up at him, and in her eyes flickered a fragile spark of hope. As he gathered the papers, ready to put them away, his phone vibrated on the table. He frowned and picked it up. A notification flashed across the screen. Alert. Unauthorized access detected in Carter & Associates' legal system. His brow furrowed as he opened the system logs. His heart clenched at the sight of the name Daniel Morris, his longtime rival, stamped across the access records. But what chilled him most was the source, directly from his own home. He sank into a chair, his hands trembling as he scrolled through the data. A few more checks revealed files had been transmitted from Vanessa's device. Each line on the screen cut into him like a blade. Vanessa hadn't just betrayed him as a wife. She had betrayed him on the battlefield of his career. Michael lifted his head, fire blazing in his eyes. He understood now that this battle reached far beyond family. It was about survival, of his work, his honor, and above all, Emily's safety. That morning, Michael put on his coat and picked up his leather briefcase, ready to head out the door. But just as he reached the threshold, a tiny hand clutched at his sleeve. Emily stood there, her eyes red from a restless night. Her small voice trembled. "Daddy, please don't go today. Stay with me. Please?" Michael froze. Those few words cut deep into his heart. He knelt down to her level, seeing her little hands trembling as they gripped his tightly, as if letting go meant losing him forever. With a gentle smile, he set his briefcase aside. "All right. Today, I'll stay with you." A faint light sparked in Emily's eyes. She hugged her green dinosaur and sat down on the sofa. Michael fetched a small comb and carefully brushed through her uneven hair. Each slow stroke felt like an attempt to erase the pain of the scissors from the day before. "My little girl is always beautiful," he whispered. Emily smiled softly, then leaned her head against his shoulder. Michael carried her into her room, picked up a storybook, and sat by her bed, reading aloud. His deep, steady voice flowed like a lullaby. Before long, Emily's eyes closed, her breathing gentle and calm. Watching her sleep, Michael felt a surge of sorrow and resolve. He knew that by simply staying, by being present, Emily could feel safe again. By noon, just as he closed her bedroom door, a knock sounded at the front door. Michael opened it to find Mrs. Thompson, the neighbor across the street, standing with a guilty look on her face. "Michael, I need to tell you something," she said, her voice trembling. Michael invited her inside. Emily had woken and clutched her dinosaur, watching the neighbor warily. Mrs. Thompson bent down, gently taking the child's small hand. "Don't be afraid, sweetheart. I know you've suffered. So many times I saw you sitting outside in the cold, your coat too thin, tears running down your cheeks. I wanted to step in, but I told myself, it's not my place. And my silence only made your pain worse." Her voice cracked, her wrinkled hands trembling as she took Emily's small hand. "I'm sorry, Emily. I won't be silent anymore." Michael stood nearby, his heart twisting at the confession. Hearing the truth from his neighbor deepened his sorrow, but also sharpened his determination. A few days later, he met with Sarah Miller, Emily's homeroom teacher. Sarah was a young woman with gentle yet firm eyes. When Michael brought up his daughter's condition, sadness flickered across her face. "I've suspected for a long time," Sarah admitted. "Emily often falls asleep in class, sometimes staring blankly as if she's been crying all night. Once I noticed bruises on her arm. I asked, but she just smiled, shook her head, and said, 'I'm fine.' I knew it wasn't true, but I was afraid I might be wrong, afraid I'd cause trouble for the family." Michael clenched his fists, guilt surging within him. He nodded, his voice rough. "You saw it, and you stayed silent, just like I did. But now, I promise, I won't let it continue." Sarah met his eyes, hers glistening. "Emily is a good child. All she needs is love and safety. You're the only one who can truly give that to her." Her words struck Michael like an arrow to the heart. He knew then that the fight for Emily's justice was not just a responsibility. It was the greatest mission of his life. That evening, after Emily had fallen asleep with her green dinosaur clutched tightly in her arms, Michael sat alone in his study. Before him lay stacks of documents, his laptop screen glowing with folders he had dreaded to open. He no longer wanted excuses from Vanessa. It was time to face the truth. He opened his email archives, scanning through each folder. Within minutes, suspicious messages appeared. Attachments containing contracts, client lists, even confidential case information. The sender's account was registered under Vanessa's name. The recipient, Daniel Morris, his fiercest rival in the legal field. Michael's heart pounded. He opened another folder, and this time photographs appeared. In them, Vanessa sat across from Daniel at an upscale cafe, their eyes locked in a way that spoke of more than business. The images sliced through him like blades, his hands curled into fists. This was not just betrayal in marriage, it was betrayal in every aspect of his life, from home to career. The next morning, Michael walked into the police station, carrying a thick stack of files. He was received by Laura Bennett, a stern investigator with her dark hair pulled tightly back. She flipped through the documents, her sharp eyes scanning every detail. "This isn't just a domestic matter," she said firmly. "This is a criminal case. We're looking at both child abuse and professional espionage. We'll open an official investigation." Michael nodded, his voice hoarse. "I don't seek revenge. I only want to protect my daughter." Laura met his eyes, her tone steady. "And that is what matters most. Prepare yourself, Michael. This battle won't be easy." On his way home, Michael pulled the car over, staring out the window. The wind outside cut cold against the glass, but inside him a fire burned steady. He was no longer just a father protecting his child. He was a warrior rising to reclaim justice for Emily and for himself. On the day of the trial, the sky hung heavy and gray, as if foreshadowing the storm to come. The courthouse buzzed with people, whispers echoing down the hallways. Michael held Emily's small hand tightly as they entered the courtroom. He bent down and whispered, "Don't be afraid. I'm here with you." Emily nodded, clutching her green dinosaur against her chest. Beside them stood Jonathan Reed, a seasoned lawyer with graying hair and sharp eyes. He laid out a thick stack of files, ready for battle. Across the aisle, Vanessa entered with her usual elegance. A sleek black dress, perfectly styled hair, flawless makeup. At her side was her attorney, a stern man in a dark suit. But in Vanessa's eyes burned a fury she couldn't conceal. The gavel struck. The judge, an older woman with silver hair and an authoritative voice, announced, "The trial between Michael Carter and Vanessa Carter is now in session." Jonathan Reed rose first, his voice ringing clear. "Your Honor, this case is not merely about divorce and custody. It includes undeniable evidence of child abuse and the leaking of highly confidential legal information." He laid out the documents, printed emails, photographs of Vanessa with Daniel Morris, and logs of the system breach. Murmurs rippled through the courtroom until the judge struck her gavel again for silence. The first witness was Mrs. Thompson, the elderly neighbor. She walked to the stand, her hands trembling. "I saw Emily many times sitting outside in the cold, wearing only a thin coat, tears on her cheeks. She wasn't allowed inside. I stayed silent because I thought it wasn't my business. But I was wrong. My silence only hurt her more." Emily's wide eyes glistened with tears as she listened. Michael placed a steady hand on her shoulder, reassuring her silently. Next came Sarah Miller, Emily's teacher. Her voice was firmer, though sorrow lingered in her eyes. "I am Emily's homeroom teacher. I noticed she often fell asleep in class, sometimes with bruises on her arms. When I asked, she only smiled and said, 'I'm fine.' I knew it wasn't true, but I was afraid to interfere. Today, I have to speak the truth." The courtroom murmured again. Vanessa clenched her handkerchief, her jaw tight. The final witness was investigator Laura Bennett. She read from her report. "We have verified evidence that Mrs. Vanessa Carter transmitted confidential files from Carter and Associates to Mr. Daniel Morris. This constitutes professional misconduct and corporate espionage. Furthermore, witness testimony and the child's account confirm both physical and psychological abuse." The room grew tense. The judge nodded, then turned to Emily. "Emily, would you like to say something?" Michael bent down, whispering softly, "Only if you're ready, sweetheart." Emily stood, trembling, clutching her dinosaur. Her voice was small, but every word carried weight. "I just wanted a mom. But my stepmother said I didn't deserve toys or love. She locked me outside and she cut my hair in front of everyone. I was so scared." The courtroom fell utterly silent. A few spectators wiped away tears. Michael's chest ached as if splitting open, but he held himself together, gripping his daughter's shoulder firmly. Suddenly, Vanessa leapt to her feet, shouting, "She's lying! All of this is made up! Silence!" the judge thundered, slamming her gavel. "One more outburst, and you will be removed from this courtroom." Vanessa bit her lip, hatred blazing in her eyes, but said nothing further. The proceedings continued, but the balance of justice had already shifted. Michael knew the truth was finally laid bare. He was closer than ever to securing Emily's future, not just through a father's love, but through the hand of justice. After the witnesses had spoken and the truth laid bare, the atmosphere in the courtroom grew heavy. Everyone held their breath, waiting. The judge finished her notes, then raised her eyes to the room. The gavel struck firm and final. After reviewing the evidence, the witness testimonies, and the investigative report, the court rules: the marriage between Michael Carter and Vanessa Carter is hereby dissolved. Vanessa froze, her lips trembling. Full custody and guardianship of Emily Carter is granted to her father, Mr. Michael Carter. Emily's eyes widened, tears shimmering as she turned to her father. Michael squeezed her hand and gave a slight nod. Mrs. Vanessa Carter is prohibited from contacting Emily Carter without explicit court authorization. Furthermore, the matter of confidential information disclosure is referred to the prosecution for further legal action. Murmurs rippled through the courtroom. Some nodded in approval, others quietly wiped away tears. Suddenly, Vanessa shot to her feet, screaming, "No! You can't do this to me! I gave everything, and now you want to throw me away like garbage?" Security officers stepped forward immediately. The judge struck the gavel sharply. "Mrs. Carter, order! One more outburst, and you will be removed from this courtroom." Vanessa gasped for breath, her face pale, but still refused to sit. Michael pulled Emily close, shielding her. She pressed her face into his shoulder, listening to the steady beat of his heart, and for the first time in months, her own heart felt safe. The judge struck the gavel one last time. "This court is adjourned." The room seemed to exhale as tension broke. Michael rose, holding Emily's hand. Weariness lined his face, but his eyes burned with resolve. Emily looked up at him, smiling faintly. A smile touched with tears, but glowing with trust. Together, they stepped out of the courtroom. Outside, the pale afternoon light spread across the courthouse steps. Emily gripped her father's hand tightly, as if to say, from this day forward, fear no longer had a place in her life. That night, they slept under the same roof without fear for the first time in months. And when dawn broke, the Carter home no longer echoed with shouting or suffocating tension. On the first morning after the trial, the Carter home no longer echoed with shouting or suffocating tension. Instead, a faint burnt smell drifted from the kitchen. Emily tiptoed out, her bare feet brushing the cool wooden floor. Michael was struggling at the stove, his face tense as if handling a tough case. The bread in the toaster was slightly burnt, the eggs clung stubbornly to the pan. He turned and caught Emily's wide-eyed stare. "Oh," he chuckled awkwardly, "I'm learning to cook. Today, you're my special guest." Emily giggled. She sat at the table, hugging her green dinosaur, watching every clumsy move her father made. When Michael finally placed the plate of eggs and toast before her, Emily tasted a bite with great seriousness, then nodded. "It's delicious, Daddy," Michael laughed in relief. His laughter mingled with her bright giggle. the first time their home rang with joy instead of anger. After breakfast, Michael walked Emily to school. Along the way, she held his hand tightly, her eyes brighter than ever. At the gate, her teacher, Sarah Miller, greeted them with a warm smile. "You look much better today, Emily." Emily puffed out her chest proudly. "Because Daddy cooked breakfast for me." Michael flushed with embarrassment, while Sarah simply nodded, her eyes gentle. That afternoon, the two stopped by a small shop on the corner. The kindly shopkeeper handed Emily a large blank sheet of paper. "Draw what you want to keep forever," he said. Back home, Emily sat at her desk with her crayons. Michael stood quietly behind her, watching. Bit by bit, a picture took shape. Her bedroom window, two toys sitting on the sill, the old teddy bear and the green dinosaur. Beneath them, a large hand holding a small one. Michael felt his throat tighten. That evening, Emily walked up to him, holding a small pair of craft scissors she used for paper. Her little hands trembled, but her eyes were firm. "Daddy!" "Keep this. If anyone ever uses scissors to hurt, you'll stop them, right?" Michael's chest ached as he pulled her into his arms, whispering, "I promise." He placed the scissors in her bedside drawer, next to her favorite hairpin. Emily smiled, wrapping her arms tightly around his neck. That night, before bed, Emily set her teddy bear and dinosaur on the windowsill. She whispered softly, "Now I'm not afraid anymore." Michael closed her door, leaving a sliver of light from the hallway. He stood there, listening to her steady breathing, peace flooding through him. He knew the past had left scars, but together they would heal. Night had fallen, and the Carter house was wrapped in an unfamiliar peace. No more shouting, no more cold stares. Only the ticking of the clock remained, mingled with Emily's steady breathing in the small room. Michael sat by the window in his study, gazing out at the quiet garden. The breeze stirred the branches gently. He sipped his tea, his heart heavy with exhaustion from recent struggles, yet eased by a profound sense of relief. He walked to Emily's room. The door was ajar, and the soft glow of the night lamp spilled into the hallway. On the windowsill, a worn teddy bear and a green dinosaur sat side by side, like loyal friends guarding the little girl's dreams. Michael stood in silence, then pulled a chair to the bedside. He studied his daughter's face, touched by a serenity she had never known in the painful months before. Deep within him, an unspoken vow echoed, "No one, and never again will anyone make you cry." Memories returned, the muffled sobs on the porch, the hair crudely cut, the desperate grip of a small hand. He clenched his fist softly, as if to seal the past away. Now he was no longer the distant father. He was the wall that would shield her from all harm. Michael leaned down and kissed Emily's forehead. She stirred faintly, but remained in her peaceful sleep. He rose and gently closed the door. In that moment, he realized life ahead would not be easy. Challenges and shadows would surely come. But within this home now lay a new foundation: trust, love, and hope. As he stepped toward the staircase, a quiet smile touched his lips. From this day on, he and Emily would begin a new chapter together, a chapter of healing and of brighter tomorrows.